Boxing truth here. Danny Garcia definitely should not take a rematch with Keith Thurman. Now Agent Garcia, Danny's father, is changing his tune after initially saying no rematch for Keith Thurman. Doesn't want his son just to be merely a stepping stone for another fighter. That's exactly what's going to happen if Danny Garcia decides to pursue a Keith Thurman rematch. Now, there's no rematch clause. There was no rematch clause in the initial contract for the first fight. It was a success, though. Both guys got career-high purses. In the aftermath of the event, it was the biggest crowd at Barclays Center that wasn't an NBA game. It was the biggest non-NBA game event at Barclays Center. Over 16,000 people showed up. It did good ratings on prime time. I think it was the leader. So overall, this fight was a success. It was a big fight, regardless of your bias. People came out. The stars were out. And it generated some interest within boxing, and as a result, it was a financial success. So congratulations to the handlers of this event, the PBC, everyone that was involved in putting this event on. It was long overdue for this fight to happen. It happened, and unfortunately, it wasn't a great fight. You know, it had little fireworks, wasn't much action. It had a good start, beginning of the fight where Thurman was actually daring to be great. He went at Danny. Surprised me a little bit. I expected Thurman to go at him later in the fight as Danny's gas tank would start to deteriorate. But Thurman, he changed it up in the beginning, went after Danny, was the leader in terms of trying to set up offense, and he came at Danny and hurt him early in the fight. But then the fight just didn't pick up after that. After the first couple of rounds, Danny was very hesitant in letting his hands go because he was wary of Keith Thurman's counter shots. Thurman's also a very good counter puncher, and Danny was not trying to overreach, not trying to get set up to be countered, and that's why he was very hesitant in letting his hands go, as he really didn't show much initiative until the later rounds. And Thurman, he did what he had to do. He won the fight. He outpointed Danny. He outboxed him. He landed the better shots. Overall, he was the more effective fighter. It wasn't a great performance. It wasn't a scintillating performance as I hoped for. I was hoping for a stoppage win for Thurman, make a statement. But Danny's a tough guy. He's got a good chin. He's durable. He could take a shot, and he's a good fighter. He's just not an elite level talent, not a pound for pound level type of a fighter. And if I'm part of Team Garcia, I think Danny Garcia should move into another direction. There's other fights out there. He's never going to beat Keith Thurman. He just doesn't have the style to beat Keith Thurman. Thurman's style is just all wrong for Danny Garcia. Thurman is just too quick on his feet, too mobile, and he's just as good as a counter puncher, and he punches harder. He's bigger, stronger, and faster than Danny Garcia. So Garcia is always going to have problems with a Keith Thurman, and perhaps will even have more problems in a rematch. Perhaps Thurman will make easier work of Danny in the second time around. Now that he's got a feel for Danny's power, he's got a feel for his timing, his style. And in a rematch, I just see more of the same. It wasn't really an exciting fight to where I need to see a rematch. I don't need to see it again, but I can understand if the handlers of both fighters opt for a rematch now that Keith Thurman, I believe, is no longer mandated to make a mandatory obligation with his WBA strap. Now, WBC, that's a different story, but now that Thurman is the super champion of the WBA, he was recently given that title before the fight. He was presented with the super belt by the WBA president prior to the fight, so that could mean he's free of any mandated obligations unless the WBA enforces a mandatory, which could be Lamont Peterson, who holds the regular strap for the WBA. The WBC the situation is a little messy. Mir Khan might go to he looks like he's going to go to another direction, so he'll probably lose his status as the mandatory challenger for the WBC strap. So work needs to be done for the next mandatory challenger within the WBC. So Thurman, he's free, I believe, to pursue a rematch with Danny if he wants a rematch. I mean, he doesn't really need it, but it's a good fight for him. Another very winnable fight like he did the first time. He could even improve on his performance. It'll be another payday. They could put it on the East Coast again, as the fight was very successful there. But for Danny, if I'm his team, I will look towards another direction. I don't want to set him up for another second straight defeat. And, Danny, he didn't take the L very well. His father definitely can't take an L. They weren't very gracious in defeat. And, Danny, he should really move into another direction. There's a fight that's a good fight for Danny and also a lucrative opportunity. They should definitely pursue an Adrian Broner fight at 147 pounds. Now that Broner is going to campaign there again since he can't make 140. Danny doesn't really need to try to prove himself and go after Thurman when Thurman he's just a superior fighter. Danny will never beat him, especially not in a rematch, especially not now. Thurman will be more confident. He'll improve on the performance and possibly get him even a more clear-cut win. Now, some people, I don't know, I haven't watched any videos on the fight. Very few videos that I watched, but overall, I felt when I watched it at one of my boys' cribs, I watched with a few people. They all felt Thurman won pretty much easily. He was the more effective fighter. He was just overall more effective. Garcia just couldn't get off. He had to be set to get his punches off, and Thurman wouldn't let him get set for most of the rounds. And Thurman, he did his homework. Every time he attacked Danny, he would dip that left hook, or he would just get out of the way of it, because he knew Danny was going to punch with him as soon as he let go of that right hand. And he did a good job. He didn't get hit too much. He gave away a last couple of rounds in the fight. A little too much running, a little too much movement. But Danny just wasn't effective enough to really take advantage of it. But Danny should go in another direction. The Broner fight's perfect for him. It's a winnable fight. He's a stationary target. He can counter Broner. It's a money fight. It'll do some business. But they're just setting themselves up for another L for Danny Garcia if he goes after Keith one-time Thurman in a rematch. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Do y'all want to see a rematch? I really don't. I don't need to see it again. Let's go on to different directions. Let Thurman pursue other options. The sky's the limit for him now. He's the unified belt holder, unified champion in the welterweight division. He could wait for the Brooks Spence winner. He can gun for a Manny Pacquiao fight. He could fight a mandatory. He could take a stay busy fight. He can do whatever the fuck he wants right now. Or he can take a rematch with Danny Garcia and another very winnable money fight for him. And Danny, it's going to be tough where he goes from here. I mean, where's the direction? The Thurman fight is going to be too tough. Will always be too tough of a fight. Just the style of Thurman is just all wrong for him. The Broner fight's good to get back in the win column and perhaps pursue other options for another title. See if Manny Pacquiao is still interested in fighting him now that he no longer holds a strap, but he needs to get back in the win column. There's other fights out there for him besides the Keith one-time Thurman rematch. But I'm ready to close the book on that chapter between Thurman and Garcia. It was what it was. Wasn't a great fight. Had little fireworks in the beginning, but styles make fights. Two counter punchers don't always create for great fights, especially when neither guy was really all that daring to try to put a statement against each other in the fight. But it was what it was. Let's move on. Let Thurman fight somebody else. And Danny Garcia should definitely be gunning for an Adrian Broner fight. A fight that he can definitely win. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.